Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week, the one show where you don't have to worry about judging anything because we do it all for you. Alex Phillips makes her return. Nice to see you, Alex. Bleksley. Maddie, Hale is here, our token Australian. And Steve Denyer, our token representative of Virgin Radio. Let's kick things off, first of all, Alex, shall we? With Lock 'em Up and Throw Away the Key.
Well, this
Part
is
94.
absolutely mad. I think if one person is emblematic of the complete overreach and zealotry of the judge-judification of those riots, you know, when Keir Starmer dragged everybody who had said something on social media or even sort of walked their dog past a demonstration into the courts and said, you're going down, you're going down.
For a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
The one person that I think is sort of emblematic of how disproportionate some of this stuff was is Lucy Connolly.
Yeah.
She is the wife of a Conservative councillor. And yes, she wrote some pretty tasty things on social media that, you know, should not have written. Any sensible human wired up the right way would just be, this is an angry person saying something angry on Twitter, which, blimey, if I looked at some of the comments I get, everyone should be in clink if
Isn't it funny, though, when you report these people
applied.
on Twitter and it says, oh, their tweet has not violated the rules, even though they threatened to kill you and burn you at the stake.
Right.
But that's OK, apparently.
That's OK.
If she'd been tweeting with one hand and filling up a jerry can at a petrol station with another, then of course she would have deserved a very hefty sentence.
Yes.
But she wasn't. She was irritated and at home and just writing unpleasant nonsense. Illegal.
Like a lot of people.
31 months.
I know. There's a question for you. You know, I'm old enough to remember when the place to go on a Sunday if you wanted to get an excitement thing going was Speaker's Corner. My dad used to take me to Speaker's Corner, which is on the corner of Hyde Park. People get up on soapboxes and he used to heckle them, funnily enough. Must be where I got it from. And, I just watched him doing it. But, you know, I mean, I don't know what the law would be. You can tell me, Peter. If I got up on a soapbox and said all the things that she tweeted, right, in a way that was just being, you know, transposed and broadcast to a few people watching me, is that an offence?
I suspect the Metropolitan Police would be very swift to arrest you while some lunatic preacher of Islam is calling for jihad, standing on another box.
That's fine. All right.
That's fine.
It depends who you are.
Depends
and what's
who you are.
tragic is this is a mother, this is a wife, this is a woman who had also really sadly lost her baby.
Yes. Although that was quite some time before, though.
Yeah, but you say that, but I'm sure for a lot of women who've gone through such things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you can't really link the two things.
It's harrowing. Well, can you not? Because if you're a woman who has lost a young baby and you're a mother yourself and the victims of that awful, disgusting crime, there is something, you know, women, I think, aren't likely to get angry if their football team loses, OK? Women aren't going to get angry about a whole load of things women aren't going to get angry about, but hurting little kids...
I could tell you a lot of things that women get angry about.
Yeah, but
they get angry a lot.
Hurting little kids, you know, it's something that women will... It's sort of wired into women.
No, I see what you're saying.
I agree with you.
Well, I tell you what, let's have a look at what the judge actually said when he delivered the verdict.
The minimum sentence after a trial for this offence would have been 3.5 years imprisonment. You pleaded guilty at the plea and case management hearing, and you are therefore entitled to a reduction in that sentence of 25%. The sentence on count 1, therefore, is one of 31 months imprisonment.
Wow. Did you just
hard
say?
To believe, isn't it?
Did he just say? Hold on, I want
he's
to
doing her a
see that
favour.
again.
Yeah.
I want to see that again because I swear to God, he said the minimum sentence after a trial would have been.
Yeah.
It's not the trial.
Well, she pleaded guilty, so there's no technically...
No, but I think that's really
Technically, there's no trial.
Because these people didn't have legal representation. They were swiftly pushed through. Like I said, it was a judge-judification of the system. The normal checks and balances, which the law should afford, I don't think were in place.
Do you know what?
Setting examples.
I went for a drink with Hugh Edwards the other night, and he told me how much he's enjoying his freedom. But I mean, yeah, of course,
you having a look around the house
with Hugh Edwards.
When you have a look around the house that he's selling for £5 million. Anyway,
Isn't there a jail overcrowding problem?
Well, there is. We're going to come to that, funnily enough.
But the fact that he's not banged up.
She poses no risk to society.
I know, but it's also a slippery slope to be jailing people for what they say online. We already know that. You also have so much child pornography and actual terrorism happening online that no one gets prosecuted
on your
for
average
it.
Palestinian march,
Excuse
you've got
me.
more hatred being...
Sorry, I've just got to interrupt here. Please don't use that expression ever again.
What?
They are child sex abuse images.
Yes.
Okay? It is not what
you're
you
right.
called it.
All right.
Fundamentally,
here we go.
not.
Listen, I've got a news report here because there's even more bad news, right? Have a look at this.
Lucy Connolly didn't take part in any of that violence herself, but as we've seen with prosecutions over the past few weeks, you don't have to have directly been involved to face the consequences. And there was a man named Tyler Kay who essentially copied and pasted exactly what Mrs Connolly had tweeted and posted it himself. He got over 3 years in prison.
So some guy who just copied and pasted the tweet got even more time than she got. 3 years.
According to this, Wes Streeting should be in prison because when you look at some of his historic tweets saying I'll throw people under buses, it's disgusting. And do you know what we have found out as well? One particular gentleman, I cannot remember his name, a grandfather, who had been present at the riots, by one of the hotels, but he wasn't, I don't think, a participant in setting any fires. And actually, with the video footage you've seen, he is standing there and the police are aggressively going after him with riot shields. And then he's a bit, he's angry and he's yobbish. But he's gone to prison, he had various medical conditions, and he commits suicide in prison. Wow.
They're not sure if he did, but he certainly did die in prison, and that is the problem.
What do you guys think should have happened? How should this have been?
Well, I think the point about the stiff sentences was to stop the actual rioting, right?
Yes.
So if you wanted to stop
the people on the front line.
Yeah, if you want to say, like, we've had 3 days of this, we don't want day 4, so we're going to lock a load of people up on day 3 so that the people who were thinking about doing it tomorrow don't do it.
Yeah.
But that time has since passed a long time ago. So what you do now, with somebody like her, weeks and weeks after the event, she's already had her life ruined. She's already been dragged through the papers.
Someone like her
Just
to the
you don't
cop
need
shop
to send her to prison.
Lifting people and taking ordinary people to the cop shop is scary enough. And also, do you know what he could have done? He could have stood behind a lectern and talked to his people, all of his people, instead of calling people far right, instead of smearing them. I remember those weeks. My mind has not been, tainted by things that have happened since. He did not address his people. He alienated his people. He vilified his people. He refused to listen.
And he made it very clear.
He
made it very clear that he doesn't get what it is that they're upset about, and that's the problem. And of course, Peter Lynch is the guy you're thinking of,
Peter Lynch,
is no longer with us. Peter, over to you and the Crown Prosecution Service.
Yes, sticking to a legal vein here. Yes. Crown Prosecution Service, to give them original title, alternatively known as Criminal Protection Service, also known as Crown
Perpetrator?
No, what's the other word? If it's not persecution, that's it. Crown Persecution Service.
Yes.
And that's very apt in this situation because, of course, I speak about the ludicrous, the outrageous, the fundamentally wrong prosecution of Sergeant Martyn Blake, who this week was properly acquitted of a charge of murder. He was charged with murdering a man called Chris Kaba. Sorry, man, I meant violent, ruthless, unscrupulous gangster. And the world is a better place without Chris Kaba. Just to make it difficult for the edit, I'll repeat that. The world is a better place without Chris Kaba. Nobody will be stabbed by him, shot by him, or otherwise assaulted by him, all of which he's done.
Or sold drugs by him, either.
Yes. So Martyn Blake went through the ignominy, the torture, the hassle, the life-changing events of waiting a year for the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, to carry out their investigation, and then for the CPS to make their decision to charge him. He had another year to wait until he stood trial. So 2 years of having his life completely and utterly distorted. And, of course, only to be rightfully acquitted by the jury in less than 3 hours. And they spent some of that time writing a letter to the judge as well. So that clearly tells you what they thought. A ludicrous persecution, not a prosecution, probably politically motivated. And for those appalling reasons, I hereby once again nominate the CPS.
Yes. But of course, don't forget, there's always plenty of people willing to have a go at the police, and we certainly do when we think it's required. But have a look at these protesters, right? Black Lives Matter, apparently. Check this out. Wallies, right, have done a Black Lives Matter protest and forgotten to invite any black people. Right? So all they've got there is a bunch of middle-class, Just Stop Oil, Free Palestine, socialist worker, Black Lives Matter idiots, right, to start shouting justice for Kaba. They didn't know that he's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. They didn't know that he had shot people in the street without any care for the people around him, that he shot a guy in a nightclub, that he'd been in jail, in and out of jail since he was 13 years of age. Yeah. This was not a nice individual.
No, an absolute revolting piece of garbage he was.
But can I just say, the reason why they go along blindly to these things, because they are not affected by any of it.
No.
They're not living in the hardened neighbourhoods where there are shootings.
Or Brixton.
And so do you know what the most white privileged thing on planet Earth is? That. Woke. Woke is actually the very definition of white privilege.
But they're helped by people like Jeremy Corbyn, right?
Yeah.
Because Jeremy Corbyn put out a tweet. Right,
he went.
In which, he's got his fist up there, solidarity with the downtrodden black guy.
Hello, home, Grandad. He's just a sad has-been.
He really is. I mean, when he's not hugging members of Hamas and inviting them into Parliament, he's sticking up for gangsters. Great, brilliant. Sadiq Khan, similarly.
And when you look at all of them, right, there's not one of them that would have a smidgen of the courage, dedication, fitness and ability to be trained to the levels so that you can take firearms out onto the streets of Britain to deal with the worst scum of the earth that we've got. They'd all run a mile and crying as they did it.
I was going to say, I just feel so desperately sorry now for this policeman, because his life, his life's been ruined already. Yeah. But now there's a
£10,000 bounty on his head.
And Peter, does he work for those 2 years? Does he?
No, he was suspended.
So he just has to sit at home without pay?
What should happen next?
He was probably suspended with pay, I would imagine, wasn't he?
Well, another scandalous part of this dreadful story is that the Independent Office for Police Conduct will now consider whether Sergeant Blake should face a misconduct hearing.
Unbelievable.
If he does, the firearms officers are going to be absolutely outraged once again. There'll be people handing in their authorisations and laying down their weapons. Just wait and see if that happens.
People will die as a result of this, because there will be such trepidation now about actually going and deploying a firearm or stopping violent criminals. And you know who will die as a result when police are too scared to apprehend, stop and search, or, be physical with a black suspect? It will be their black victims.
And it will be Chris Kaba, who's probably done more harm to the black community than anybody in the police force ever has, right? Will be running London, because that's what they're doing. Maddie, over to you. You've got... So
I'm nominating one of my own, Mike.
Yeah, good. About time.
Australian Independent Senator. This goes against, my patriotism, but I'm nominating Australian Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe. Now, if you're Australian, you know that she's always in the headlines for various public outbursts that she does. But this one absolutely takes the cake. Swearing at King Charles after he's done a speech in Australian Parliament in Canberra, screaming, "Not my king, you are not my king, we want a treaty."
Effing the colony and all the rest of it.
Exactly, swearing at the king and Queen Camilla. So incredibly embarrassing for Australia and the Australian party to be in there bipartisan and to have this insane woman running around screaming at it.
And she was wearing some kind of weird fur thing.
Yeah, she wears, I think it might be native Aboriginal
It's not like
stuff,
a platypus or something, is it?
I actually don't know what it is, but regardless, everyone in Australia wants reconciliation. That has been up for debate, but this is not the way in which you go about it.
When you say reconciliation, you mean reparations? That's what we call it.
Just in terms of, Australia Day is on January 26th.
Right.
A lot of people call it Invasion Day because it's a day that...
when you say a lot of people, some people, you mean?
Some people.
Not everyone, right?
No, but it is a very divisive... Like, most people don't celebrate Australia Day anymore. So there is calls for there to be, an Australian Day, but... a normal Australia Day, but then also a Remembrance Day, which I think would be the right way to go about it. Regardless, she's shouting. It's so embarrassing for everyone. She looks insane.
She is insane. Let's have a look.
Give us what you stole from us. Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people. You destroyed our land. Give us a treaty. This is not your land. This is not your land. You are not my kids. You are not our kids.
Charles is just sitting there there going, what is going on? Could you imagine being an actual member of Parliament and being dragged out?
This woman is so nutty, though, that she's been expelled by the Green Party for being too nutty.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how bad things are.
I was going to say, she's got pre...
She's like AOC on steroids.
And why did it take so long for her to be
I think there was a state of shock going on, probably.
Because, I mean, somebody said to me, shouldn't the audience have just started booing her and drowning her out? Instead, they were all just kind of looking at her like, oh, my God.
She's there by herself. She obviously she's obviously not pre-warned anyone. Right. She's got she's independent.
No, but everyone knows that she's likely to do something like that.
Exactly.
And she's got very Republican.
But I don't think anyone would have expected, you're not expecting her to do things. It's just that when she does things like that, you're like, classic.
But maybe they should have expected it because she's done it before.
Do you know what was weird? So
she's shouting at a guy who's suffering from cancer as well.
Exactly. And the update on that was basically when you're sworn into Australian Parliament, I presume it's the same here, as you swear your allegiance to the Queen and you say the Queen...
Or the King,
so she was in 2022, so she was swearing to the Queen...
And did she?
And his heirs.
Right.
She claims, I didn't do that. I swore allegiance to the Queen and her heirs. And so when you go back and listen to it, she did say heirs, but, people are saying, but you then write heirs when you actually do swear your allegiance after the kind of vocal part of it.
But, she's not the only Australian plank this week, right? Because I was going to nominate this woman.
Nominate me?
I don't know. No, you. No, Matilda Campbell. And it's great that somebody in Australia is still called Matilda.
Everyone's called Matilda.
All saying Matilda, darling. Do you know about this story, Matilda Campbell? Matilda Campbell was hiking with friends in bushland, it says here, in the Hunter Valley, New South Wales.
Been there,
right?
one country.
Now, there's lots of big boulders and rocks and things, a bit like, Bryce Canyon National Park in America. Because she was of a certain age, she decided she'd stop and take a picture, a selfie, right? She dropped the phone down into the back of this boulder, right? And then decided that she might be able to get it. So she dangled herself down and basically got stuck upside down with her feet in the air.
Oh, my God.
She was stuck for 7 hours, right? Trying to retrieve her phone. So I was gonna give it to her, but I just thought I'd add this one in as a kind of
Chuck needs to put a photo of her legs dangling
You can put a photo of her bare feet, which you can see.
But if she was sort of down under, does that mean she was actually the right way up in Britain?
Absolutely right. Dozens of police. Let's talk about a waste of time. Dozens of police, paramedics, firefighters, rescue experts from the nearest town, which is a place called Cessnock, is it? North of Sydney, Cessnock. And she was just the laughing stock, I think, of the world for a couple of days.
I didn't even know that was in Australia because I looked at that photo and I, for some reason, just flashed back to that movie, James Franco.
She was about 10 feet in, and I mean, just ridiculous. Anyway, Steve, over to you. You've got an even better one.
Yeah, I mean, we should bring back the Carry On movies, Carry On Up the Fire Station for this one. So this is a state-of-the-art fire station in Western Germany that was completed last year. The cost of tens of millions of euros, and it's burnt to the ground.
Sorry.
Because
nobody was hurt.
So the great thing is no one was hurt. However, 10 fire engines were completely destroyed. You've just got like 170 firefighters, some crying their eyes out.
Here we go.
To put the flames out.
This is the actual blaze as it's happening.
No, apparently this particular building didn't need sprinklers, and this is the whole problem. It didn't have sprinklers, so no one knew about the fire.
So the fire department of this place called Statollendorf?
Statollendorf.
In Germany. They think building a fire station without any kind of fire measures is a good thing.
No fire alarms.
No fire alarms and no sprinklers.
Yeah, the service has said...
Sorry? I thought that was illegal. I thought if you build a building now, you have to have both, don't you?
Wouldn't you? They said it's a facilities station, so it didn't require them. How bizarre it is.
How did the fire start? Does anybody know?
No, well, they think it was from one of the trucks.
Right.
Some kind of ignition.
Brilliant.
I can't keep this together.
So in addition to building a fire station with no fire safety measures at all, they've now got trucks from the fire department that spontaneously combust. It's probably an electric one.
But probably was. Yeah. One of the firefighters said, it's a nightmare for a firefighter. No one wants to have to extinguish his own fire station.
I suppose the good news is it didn't have to go very far. It's not like you have to get in the truck and go for 10 miles at high speed.
I know, but it seems to not matter.
Do a good job.
Was the cat all right?
Fine.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's a great story, though. They completely passed me by that one as well.
It's unbelievable.
Well done for finding that out.
Fire alarmless.
Coming up, in the next bit, we're going to be doing some more lags being released from prison. because it was time for Shabana Mahmood, once again the Justice Secretary, to let out 1,100 more people. And this time, they managed to bring even better supercars than the last time they all got released. We're doing a bit of that, plus some gender gentrification as well. This is Plank of the Week. So, you might all remember, welcome back to Plank of the Week, by the way. You might all remember, was it, a month or so ago, they let out about 2,400 prisoners, and there were live cameras outside. We had one live camera. In fact, why don't we watch this? It was me watching them all being released out of HMP Brixton, I think it was, last month.
The public sit at home and see some grandmother being... covering his face, no doubt. He'll be back. Don't
welcome back to the free world, my son.
But with not what will he be given, he won't be given very much. And so
it's a joke. I mean, I can't believe I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm watching this, mate. They've just released. I don't know who that is. I don't know what he's been doing. I don't know what he's coming out to do. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? They just would have this door would just open and somebody would come out, and some of them had loads of stuff, right? And I was then explained to me, I said, how did you come out of jail with loads of stuff? And apparently you're allowed to buy stuff when you're in jail.
So like clothes?
No, crack.
I thought it was drugs.
Well, no, drugs. I mean, some people buy music systems because you earn money while you're in there. But last time around, there was a bit of to do because people were having champagne corks going off. There was one guy picked up in a Lamborghini. And you would have thought that when Labour had a conversation about doing it again, that they might have said, you know, we should really try and make sure that the optics are a bit better. We don't see these people coming out of prison looking like they're really, really happy, about to have a massive party and an orgy in the back of a Rolls Royce. But in fact, it was worse this time around, right? Because you'll see in a moment, this is a guy in a Rolls Royce Cullinan. Now, this car costs around about £350,000. As they went by the female journalist who was filming them, they shouted that she should flash at them. This is another guy. This guy's a kidnapper who actually tortured his victim, came out, and that's his Bentley sitting behind him. And there's also a Mercedes G-Wagon there. And he said, big up Keir, because he said he was very happy that Keir Starmer had given permission for him to leave.
That's so embarrassing.
It's just ridiculously embarrassing.
And he doesn't pay a lot of tax, you see.
If he was a taxpayer,
he wouldn't be so keen on Keir, would he? Especially after the upcoming budget.
So we got Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis. There was one guy who was in for fraud who got released after serving 40% of his sentence. He gets into a Lamborghini Urus, which costs about 250 grand.
Yeah.
And I said this to you on another show, Peter. You would think that the crimes that they have committed would lead the police to go and take some of their assets, particularly if you're involved in a fraud and you've got a car worth 250 grand. Don't you think that would be taken off you?
But crime doesn't pay.
But it totally does.
Isn't that what we're all told?
Apparently
crime
it does.
Doesn't pay.
It really does.
What's the prerequisite for getting out, by the way? Because you can't be... It doesn't apply to terrorists or sex offenders.
It's not supposed to, but unfortunately, with the way that the justice system works, there was one guy who was released last time around who was in for a sex offence, and within, I think, 5 minutes of him coming out, he'd committed another sex offence.
My God.
And they had to take him and put him back in again.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like a
dozens
revolving
and dozens
door.
of them are going straight back in.
Yeah.
But I hear, because David Gauke, former MP and Minister, is doing some review about the prison estate and this, that and the other. I've heard that his first recommendation is going to be installing revolving doors.
Yes, absolutely right.
That will just make
I've got the details on that. That guy,
on the taxpayer, of course.
The guy I was telling you about who said big up Keir Starmer, Daniel Dowling Brooks. He was a convicted armed kidnapper who actually filmed himself torturing his victim.
That is disgusting.
And I mean, he's now back on the streets in his Bentley. And you just think, what's going on?
Could you imagine being the victim?
I know. And they don't. So last time around as well, they released quite a few men who had been done for domestic violence, and they didn't tell the women that they had committed the domestic violence against. They were even letting them out.
That's
the whole thing's dreadful. The optics are
Yeah.
incredibly bad, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me sick.
And of course, the other reason it's a bad idea is quite a lot of the people they're releasing don't actually have anywhere to go. So they're completely homeless. They don't have anywhere to put them. So they're just kind of released into the community. And some of them are living on the street, committing crimes in order to go back in. And you know, you just know that something like 60 to 70% of them are just going to end up back in prison anyway. It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a folly, a nonsense.
An absolute complete folly. Now here we have a prisoner thanking Keir Starmer.
What a legend intelligent Keir Starmer is. I mean, what? Big up Keir, mate. We're out celebrating. We're in a Rolls Royce. That's it. Living it large. I've got some champagne, Keir. That's it. Way! Yeah, I nicked that. Yeah, don't tell anyone. Well, it wouldn't matter anyway, would it? Nobody'd do nothing.
Yeah, that's Noreen Skinner. She's a comedian.
Oh, okay. I was like...
But, you know, you wouldn't be surprised because actually the people who are really doing it are pretty much doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Opening bottles of champagne. You know, there was one guy who was a sort of convicted burglar of many, many years standing. It's all he knows how to do. Get a big hug from his wife as he comes out. He's brought his kids along. You know, they're having a party. And it's like tomorrow night he'll be back out burglaring somebody's house. That's what he does.
And that woman, Lucy Connolly, who has gone to prison for 32 months, it will destroy her life. It will destroy the life of her children, her husband, and she's been an upstanding, normal member of society to this point. No harm whatsoever to the public.
No.
That is the prerequisite for being released. If somebody has put out a dodgy tweet, you get to walk free.
And you know what? I said this on the show before, but there's a reason why so many women don't come forward. And it's because you have something ridiculous, like 10% of actual, you know, perpetrators.
What you mean about violence?
Yeah. And then you have, you know...
Because the police can't protect them as well, you know. Alex, over to you. The SNP. We've had them in for a while.
Do you know what? The good old days when they did the Fred West tent on Nicola Sturgeon's front garden, which I keep mentioning. I love it. Right. And we were looking for the sort of, I don't know, definition of what a woman was buried underground.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out they haven't really learned from their errors and the implosion of their party for saying Isla, what's her face, what's his face, what that thing was. Was a woman who could go to women's prison. Because instead of going, oh, do you know what, that didn't work last time round, they've doubled down. They've decided there is this whole multitude of genders, a plethora
24,
of various versions. And when you look through them all, it doesn't make sense. You've got, I'm a man who thinks he's a woman who thinks he's a man, I'm a man who thinks he's everything, I'm a woman who thinks they're nothing, I'm thinking but I don't know what I am, I'm not even thinking at all. How do you...
I've got a list of some of them here, right? You can be cisgender, trans man, trans woman, non-binary, trans brackets not otherwise specified. I don't know what that is.
That's in the process. That's ellipsis. That's
trans masculine, trans feminine.
What's that?
That is
gender queer.
I don't know. Yeah, they're all the same thing. They're just weird people with short fringes and mental illness.
Wake me up when he's finished that list.
I'll tell you what I've got. I've got somebody even better, an Irish senator called Sharon Coogan, reading out all of the genders, and this took quite a while.
Zypho gender, zero gender, zigzag ender, zo d ender, zo gender, so engender, zoom gender, XY gender, and asylo gender.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
A constitution on what? On alphabet?
Yes.
On whatever that was. This is just trolling us right now. Right. Do you know, I've got a really easy way about identifying gender.
Oh,
hold on. Are you going to take your clothes off? Yeah.
Not a man.
No.
Oh, I thought you were about to flash.
No, women.
Thank Christ for that.
Can I look?
Get a bit dodgy there for a second.
It's safe to turn my head around, Jet.
I want you guys to know that my pronouns are me.
Yeah.
Just so we can,
But so are theirs. That's the problem, because the weirdest thing about the pronoun game... the weirdest thing about the pronoun game is if I wanted to speak to you, I'd be like, you know, all right, Peter, how you doing? All right, Mads. All right, Steve. It's when you leave the room that I'd be like, is that her phone? I wouldn't say is that her phone too. Yeah. So the weirdest thing about the narcissism of the pronoun game is it only clicks in when you're not even there to hear it.
My pronouns are there.
Yes. Now, my favourite one of these genders, the 24, is one, because when I did this story first, it wasn't the SNP, but somebody else coming out with them. It might have been, I think, one of the hospitals that was saying, you know, you had to fill out a form.
Yeah, it was.
Tick one of these boxes, right? And I thought genuinely this was what it was, this was how you pronounce it, big ender. But it turns out that was bi gender.
Oh my God!
I thought big ender sounded better, you know, because that sounds like a proper gender. What gender are you? I'm a big ender, me. You know. Don't worry about that.
I thought shiitake was shit take.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are from Australia, so that's fair enough.
I'm not. I'm a second-class citizen.
Yeah. I mean, it is just nonsense. But as you say, I mean, the SNP, there was a lot of speculation actually at the weekend because the SNP at the weekend lost yet another senior official, a guy called by the name of Murray Foote, who used to be the head of press and who resigned once before, but then came back to be the chief executive. And everyone thought, well, if he's resigning, surely there's something coming down the pike from, the cops that he might not want to be associated with.
If you were going to think of any country that is the least likely to go down that route, it's kind of Scotland, you know.
Well, I mean, I'm from Scotland, technically.
Tossing,
Are you?
My parents are both Scottish, right? I was born in London.
But you wouldn't think they're for it.
Yeah.
Love a kilt.
I mean, the Scots are generally speaking thought to be the most straightforward people in the world.
I love Scotland.
I just think the SNP, because they know they're on the outright, because no one likes them anymore, that I think they just want to immortalise themselves by sticking their own initials, their own sort of, abbreviation. LGBTQ.
But also the truth of it
plus.
was the fact that they had to go into coalition with the Green Party, and that's kind of what killed them off, because it was the Green Party and a guy called Patrick Harvey that had all this gender nonsense as part of his, package. He was like, well, if you want to make me the sort of deputy first minister, you have to now adopt all these Green Party
was his package
policies.
male or female?
His package is quite small, I think, because he's not a very big guy. That's another story.
So
Peter,
he's not a big ender?
He's not a big ender, no, definitely not. In fact, I'll tell you what, he might be more of a gender non-conforming.
What's that mean?
I have no idea. You look at me as if I should know.
I thought they all sounded the same, to be honest.
Pangender. Pansexual, I've heard of. That's the one where you're basically attracted to anything.
Yeah.
Including pans, presumably.
Shirley Bassey sang a song about that, didn't
Hey,
big ender.
I thought it was going to be pangender.
A little time with me.
Absolutely right. Anyway, assigned male at birth, brackets not specified.
That's the first time I've heard that.
I think you've been assigned
in a threatening manner.
You were assigned male at birth.
In the room. I can tell you were a man of distinction, a real big ender.
I need to take him to a cabaret bar.
It works.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have to sing on Steve
Peter Bleksley.
Well, Soho used to be full of those kind of places, but not anymore. Now it's gone all trendy. Over to you, Peter, for the next one.
I've no idea what I'm talking about.
You've got Andrew Talbot here, who's a policeman.
Oh, my word.
He's a policeman who stole.
How could I forget? Yeah. Right, please, everybody, remember the name. Andrew Talbot, one of Greater Manchester Police's serious crime squad members. But poor Mr. Talbot didn't realise that going on the serious crime squad meant that you're supposed to detect serious crime. He thought he'd go on there and commit serious crime.
He must have just misunderstood the instructions.
Clearly, it's easily done, maybe, I don't know, maybe he was a big ender who couldn't read and write. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, luckily, we've got a news report on it, so let's have a look at this.
As you said a moment ago, he was caught back in 2020 when a bag of white powder was found on a path outside his daughter's primary school. Staff at the school looked back at CCTV and saw that it was Andrew Talbot that had dropped it, and they then called police. When Talbot then next went into work, he was arrested, and they found cocaine in his pockets, in his jeans and in his jacket.
Oh, not exactly a master criminal.
He's got a better police than the police at this stage.
It gets better though, right? He stole 4 kilos of cocaine.
Right, that's quite a lot of cocaine.
With a street value of about, I don't know, $500,000 thereabouts, right? And then he used Greater Manchester Police's computer system to research drug dealers that he could sell it to. I mean, he is
drug dealers?
Stupid.
He googled drug dealers and
he just searched their systems. Obviously, they've got lots of drug dealers on the system to see, where's he? What's his address? Where's his phone number? Maybe I can give him a bell and say, I've got a Kia Charlie for you. So, you interested? He doesn't speak with a London accent.
Maybe he could have disguised himself as a London.
Do you think he was that clever? If he's dropping bags of Charlie outside of school...
Is he just dropping it there by accident? Or
yeah.
Dropping it
he's reached into his pocket.
Oh, so he's obviously...
it's fallen out of his bag.
He's probably taking some drugs. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's
I think he was trotting around the streets selling it, and all of that.
Dear me.
So, anyway, he's got 19 years for his troubles.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So if he serves half of that, say a decade...
He'll be out next week.
He's going to...
Into a Lamborghini. Away you go.
With his drug dealing friends.
With a bit of luck, he's going to have about a decade or so in the shovel to consider his actions and his foolery.
Wow.
But it does make you wonder, and I mean, I know this is probably an impossible question to answer, but, do they not do any kind of psychological testing when they hire police officers and go, are you or are you not more likely to be a wrong 'un?
He'd been a cop a long time. I think he had about 20 years' service.
Really?
How come no one noticed? That's a huge amount of drugs, isn't it? Did no one notice in the storeroom that...
Clearly, the drugstore kind of reckoning and record-keeping probably leaves a little bit to be desired.
Understatement of the week. I mean, it's always been said, hasn't it, that most of the drugs that the police confiscate sort of end up not necessarily being used for evidence, but they sometimes find their way back out onto the streets.
Well, some of them actually go to medicinal purposes, like heroin, because that gets used to create the anaesthetics and all of that.
Police New Year party.
I did not know that.
Street drugs, and then you go to hospital. You're like, here you go.
It all comes out in the wash.
And the cannabis that gets seized, that gets recycled into Christmas parties.
Sometimes they burn it, don't they? Sometimes they burn it, like en masse, as they do in America. Which is never a good thing.
Yeah, you want to be on the roof.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely right.
Wow.
Now, coming up, we're going to go across the United States of America, getting very close to the old general election there for president, and also back to one of our old favourites of the airlines as well. This is Plank of the Week. Steve, over to you. Kamala Harris.
Yeah, so we are, I mean, literally a week and a bit away from the US election. Could this really be down to McDonald's?
Yes.
Because Kamala Harris said that one of her first jobs, she worked in McDonald's in the 80s. Now, McDonald's...
In California, right?
In California. McDonald's have turned around and said, we've got no records of this ever happening, you know. And the staff in this particular McDonald's have been told to keep quiet. So one of the most genius moves of recent times, Donald Trump goes to McDonald's in Pennsylvania for the weekend, dons a McDonald's apron and starts serving out French fries. He was on the French fry counter. He also served a few people at the drive-thru and said, this is 30 minutes that I've spent in McDonald's working, unlike Kamala Harris, because she's never been here.
Well, let's have a look at him doing it, because it is a stroke of political genius, this.
Yeah.
Mr. President, you actually have worked at McDonald's now versus...
Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala.
Are you going to put this on your resume?
I never worked here.
Like
Absolutely hilarious.
And it was,
genius.
There was so much great stuff that came out of it.
All the AI photos.
Yeah, and he's walking around, and also the great headline, McDonald Trump. You know, he's just brilliant. Here he is meeting a customer.
I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again. Thank you. Look at that.
Mr.
Look at that. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Nice to see you.
You made it possible for ordinary people like us to meet you.
You're not ordinary.
I mean,
he deserves to win it through that. I think.
He does.
The commander in beef.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's great. That is great.
What's funny was he was saying his favourite meal from McDonald's is the fillet of fish. I was like,
I didn't even know they still
alarming.
did that. Well, yeah, but also, do you remember there used to be a time when he was in the White House the last time around where he would sit up eating cheeseburgers from McDonald's
Oh, yes.
and just tweeting until like 3 o'clock in the morning.
He was obsessed when he had it when he had COVID.
Yeah, so he's a big fan of McDonald's. And when they asked him, I think at one point, what's your favourite? He might have said fillet of fish at one point, and the rest of it he said, oh, I like all of it. So I think he's genuinely a fan. But here's something that came out of it. You mentioned AI. This is an AI prediction of what could have happened. This is Donald having a bit of a meltdown. It's just a remarkable story. But
no such thing as bad publicity.
What I love the most is you don't need AI to make Kamala look like an idiot. She does it all by herself.
She really does.
I mean,
she's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. I was watching another interview with her this week, and they were talking to her about Joe Biden, and she was really like defensive and on the back foot, and was trying to make out that he's absolutely fine. Everybody knows that he isn't. And eventually the interviewer said, well, yeah, but if he was fine, surely he'd be running for president.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be you, it'd be him. And then she just launched back into her comfort zone and was like, well, the thing is, we're all about having new leadership. And you're going to go, you're talking rubbish. You're just saying nothing.
And that was an MSNBC interview as well.
Yeah.
It's this thing that she repeats in every single interview and every single speech. And I've forgotten what it is, because it doesn't make any sense. But she's just literally
I think it's the middle class thing.
No, it's something like the hurt of the past and the healing.
Oh,
Like that.
Yeah,
she
yeah.
says it every time.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't even mean anything.
Well, now people have started doing it last week, actually, answer questions like Kamala. So I did this actually with Peter, didn't I, on the show last week?
Yeah.
Should we do it again? Ask me a question.
Yeah. Mrs. Vice President, do you think the US should continue to supply arms to Israel?
Well, you see, Peter, the thing is, I was born in a very middle-class household, and whenever I speak to people about this, they always say the same thing. They just want compromise and they want solutions.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're all about. And that's how she speaks. And it's just ridiculous because you learn nothing. She says the same thing about almost any subject. And I think people are finding her out now because the polls are starting to move and the money is really moving. There's an awful lot of money being bet on Trump.
I can't tell her and Meghan apart, you know, the way they talk.
Has anyone seen them in the same room?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a question.
Conspiracy theories.
I mean, it is actually, yeah. I mean, but it would be like having Meghan Markle in the White House, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just bizarre. Anyway, so, Maddie, over to you.
So I am nominating Ryanair today, actually.
Have you ever been on Ryanair?
I've only been on it once,
right.
and that's not because I'm a princess. It's just that, you know, I'm new to my travels.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if you had been on it. I happen to think Ryanair do exactly what they say on the tin.
Yeah.
You know, they get from point A to point B about as fast as you can. It's annoying that they don't have a rack to put anything in, but, you know, in the end...
Do they play that bugle sound when they arrive on time still?
I haven't been on Ryanair for a while.
Yeah.
It's like a fanfare. I've only done it once and it was completely fine.
Right.
But I'd also had problems with EasyJet. But the reason why I'm nominating this, because I just think this is just the dumbest PR for your own company and in general. This flight from Faro to Dublin, it gets turned around a million times, and basically the passengers, what's meant to be a 3-hour flight, passengers are on board for 15 hours because it's on the tarmac for ages. They go
That's
around.
the worst nightmare, isn't it?
And they have to move around because of Storm Ashley. Then they land at Shannon Airport, get up again. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, it's gone for 15 hours. Ryanair doesn't even offer anyone complimentary water. They have to pay for absolutely everything. And so passengers are saying, can we just have a glass of water or a bottle of water because we're on here for 15 hours? It was from 9 a.m. till about 12 at night when they finally got to the destination. Yeah. And they're like, no, nothing. And then Ryanair gets in trouble for it. And their spokesperson comes out and goes, no, passengers need to pay for everything.
Yeah. Because Michael O'Leary is a guy who absolutely lives by the sword, dies by the sword. This is a guy who I first came across, I think, when he was buying into something like, do you remember Buzz Airlines? It was it was a BA cheap version of BA. Now they've got their own cheap version of BA. It's called BA. He bought it over and he had his first meeting with all the kind of assembled staff at Luton Airport or somewhere. And he said, anybody here from the unions? And a few people put their hands up. He was like, get out. Just chucked them all out and just said, you haven't got a job anymore. And then he said, here's what you do if you get a complaint from a passenger. And he picked up a piece of paper and he just went like that.
I was going to say, when it comes to PR, he doesn't
And they
care.
were like, oh, OK then. And he, once, I think we may have this actually, he once actually suggested that he should get people to pay to use the toilets on the plane. Have a look.
If we could get rid of 2 of the 3 toilets, we could put in 6 extra seats onto the aircraft. 6 extra seats would allow us to drop the average fare by 4% for every passenger on board. But we need fewer people queuing to go to the toilet. How do you get fewer people queuing to go to the toilet? Charge them for it. And then you will all go in the terminal before they depart, and they'll all wait until then go in the terminal when they arrive. And we use charges to kind of train people to travel in the most cost-efficient way. We'll give the money we get for the toilet fees away to some charity for incontinent passengers or for incontinence in the young or the aged. We don't want the money.
I mean, this is the thing. He also once, I remember, decided that he wanted to fly a plane with standing room only because he said, let's get more people on it. I'm not against this guy. No, but I'm not against him. I mean, if you knew that there was a flight that you could get on and it was half the price of getting a seat, and it was, say, I don't know, if you're flying from here to Dublin, I wouldn't care, standing up.
You know what? I would give that man the job of being in charge of deportations.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here's your appeal.
Yeah.
You're gone.
You're gone.
Standing room only on the plane, and you can't even use the crapper.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Exactly. Also, don't you love the way that he's able to work out in his head what the margin is if you get 6 more seats on the plane? I mean, we need more people like him. And you're absolutely right to say that they were wrong not to give water. But that's just what they do.
They ran out of toilet paper, apparently, as well.
Apparently people were having panic attacks. The toilets were overflowing. I mean, it really was even grimmer than a UU Ryanair.
There's nothing worse than being stuck on a plane when you don't want to be.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it's on the runway and there's no way off.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely horrendous stuff. Well, anyway, we've got a pretty good selection today. I'm not quite sure how easy this is going to be to judge, but my final nomination is coming up. And we're going to look at one of the unions because, the unions are now the big guys in charge of everything because Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are too frightened to say no to them. So we'll be finding out what's going on with Unite Union. Coming up next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Now, you might have heard of a guy called Len McCluskey, Peter, because you're old enough to remember him. He used to be the guy who was the head of Unite Union. Unite is one of the big sort of civil service unions, one of the big office worker unions. It's now run by a woman called Sharon Graham. But when Len McCluskey was in charge of he was a proper old-fashioned union baron, wasn't he?
You can't get me on part of the union.
Straubs,
You can't
very famous song. Steve will know that one. Remember
What's
the
the singing
Straubs?
from
You
you
probably
today?
don't.
No, sorry.
It's a great song.
I'll give you another couple of bars. You can't get me, I'm part of the union. You can't get me, I'm part of the union. It goes on.
Well, so
I think when Britain's Got Talent is coming.
When Len McCluskey was in charge of the Unite Union, he thought it'd be a great idea to get himself involved in property, because he thought, you know, not only do we need a new world headquarters for the Unite Union, but we could build a conference centre, we could build a hotel attached to it, we could rent it out to the Labour Party for conferences. It could be absolutely brilliant. The problem is that they spent £112 million building this hotel and conference centre in Birmingham, right? Which was apparently valued just recently at £29 million. So, I mean, it's a big project, right? But they seem to have spent £83 million more than they were supposed to. And unfortunately now for the Unite Union, they're being investigated by the Serious Fraud Office.
See, why don't unions stick to doing what unions do?
This is the problem, right? Now, Len McCluskey, you might remember, was a big mate of Jeremy Corbyn's. You know, they were literally like blood brothers, right? And when he was in charge, he basically said that this was not a problem, and despite the fact there was a £30 million difference between what was paid for the hotel and what it should have cost, everything was fine, nothing to see here. But as soon as Sharon Graham took over, she went, hang on a minute, I think we better have a look into this and see what's going on. And Len McCluskey's gone very quiet. Nobody knows what happened to all the money. And I'm not suggesting he did anything wrong with it, of course. That would be incorrect of me to suggest that. But the Serious Fraud Office now think that there's a massive problem. Basically, they've said now, where is it? In line with long-established practice to avoid prejudice to law enforcement activity, we can neither confirm or deny any investigation into this matter. But what Unite have said is it's important to note that Sharon Graham has had to endure repeated attacks by those with much to lose since she launched these inquiries from both inside and outside the union. So I smell a bit of a rat here. I think there's going to be you know when they say follow the money.
I wonder what the hotel's like.
Well, I think probably not very good.
You think you get a 7 o'clock alarm call with, you know...
You probably no, because
the red flag being blaring out.
The red flag. You get a special visit from Jeremy Corbyn. He brings you tucks you in at night. And
picture of him on the wall every room you go in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, it's just this. I mean, it still houses their regional headquarters, but nobody's really very sure if it's ever been used properly. But it's like a massive white elephant. It's ridiculous.
Red elephant.
A red elephant. Yes, exactly right. So, £112 million. You wonder if you're in the Unite Union whether you might question whether you want to give them any more money.
Yeah.
Because they've used all the union funds, of course, to get this stuff.
It must be the most expensive building in Birmingham as well.
Well, there's not a lot of competition, is there? I mean, I've been to Birmingham, and it's possibly one of the worst stations, I think. Birmingham New Street Station.
Oh, is it? I'm going there.
Are you?
In literally like
it's horrific.
2 weeks.
Well, you've got to watch on YouTube. There's a great little piece of footage. Don't go to any of the food outlets there because somebody's filmed all the rats that live there during the night. And a lot of the food outlets leave some of their stuff out, and there's rats running in and out in between all the food and the cakes and the croissants and everything.
Oh, that's disgusting.
So
I won't be eating.
Take your own packed lunch, I think would be what I would tell you. Right, well, I don't know. I mean, we've got, as ever, we have got lots from the Labour Party, haven't we? We've got Shabana Mahmood, we've got Lucy Connolly being jailed, we've got the Crown Prosecution Service. I think it might be between... can you really blame Birmingham Crown Court, I suppose, is the answer for this?
No, we've just got to take it all the way back to Sir Keir Starmer. You know he's basically my nominee every time I'm on. I just try and disguise it in clever ways.
Yes.
But it's him.
It is kind of him.
It's him.
But is it his? It's not really his fault about the Crown Prosecution Service going after...
Everything's his fault, Mike.
Martyn Blake. I know that sometimes I trip myself up and say, but
that was also his fault.
It can't all be his fault. You know, at the moment, you know where he is? He's on his way to Samoa. 28 hours on a plane, hopefully not Ryanair. 28 hours back on a plane, spending 2 days there. So he's basically away for nearly a week, but most of it is in the air. I mean, what a nightmare for these people. Can you imagine being stuck on a plane?
I would hate it.
It doesn't make any sense.
There are some poor journalists have had to go with them, and they're stuck on a plane with David Lammy and Keir Starmer. Can you imagine? I think it might have to be the Crown Prosecution Service, don't you?
Fantastic. fantastic.
Yeah, because I mean,
Martyn Blake, I send you all the very best to you and your family now and into the future.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because I think every decent person in this country knows that what he did was the right thing, and there should never have ever been a question of that, and there should never have been a prosecution.
Yeah.
And the Crown Prosecution Service are now under pressure, I think, to explain how it is that they didn't bring any charges against all sorts of people like Mohammed Al-Fayed, you know, like Jimmy Savile, like all the other people that many of whom...
Never forget the Manchester Airport scuzzers.
Yeah, the Manchester Airport scuzzers, we still don't know what's happening with that. And yet they think it's a great idea to bring charges, murder charges, against a police officer for doing his job. Shocking. So, Crown Prosecution Service, there you go. There we are. Thank you of the week. So, thank you very much indeed. Alex Phillips, thank you very much indeed. Peter Bleksley, Maddie, Hale, Steve Denyer, thank you very much, all of you. A very interesting session, that. We'll be back same time next week.